Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel, click that notifications button, get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. You might have nothing to do when that ping comes through and you think, you know what, might as well press play, and you might actually enjoy the video. So please do that. Hit a like, subscribe, all that, comment, all that stuff, share it, help the channel grow. This particular video, we're going to talk about Chris Eubank Jr. and Marcus Morrison. It's actually going to be a response to Hatman. Hatman put out a video where he was respectfully disagreeing with me on my position on Chris Eubank Jr. versus Marcus Morrison. So let's discuss that. Just to give you a bit of background information, I put out a video where I wasn't particularly impressed. I felt as though he was trying to emulate Roy Jones a bit too much. He was trying to almost create a carbon copy of himself, it seemed to me, that he was trying to be a boxer, something that doesn't suit who he is. To me, he's a pressure fighter and he needs to hone those skills. Hatman put out a video though, couple of videos. The first one is called Chris Eubank Jr. versus Marcus Morrison. Pound shop Roy Jones, post-fight review, no footage. And he goes to extensive detail where he's showing using clips, images, where he's showing the little idiosyncrasies and new sort of wrinkles that he's added to his game that he didn't previously have as part of his game. And you can definitely check that out. Great video. I'm going to put the description box of that video and the other relevant video, the links of those in the description box of this video. The other video he put out is Chris Arreola says he didn't want to get caught like Anthony Joshua against Andy Ruiz. And the first half of that video does exactly what it says on the tin. The second half, he goes into the Eubank Morrison fight, and that's when he talks about saying how he respectfully disagrees with me, and he's basically explaining it from the perspective of, look, you can develop other skills without undermining or sort of not at the expense of your pressure fighting skills. So you can develop new skills, but as long as it's not at the expense of your pressure fighting skills, that's not a bad thing. So that's how he explains it, and that's his position. And so I'm just sort of responding to that. Because I have to say, Hatman is a very, very intelligent and very perceptive analyst and perceptive man. In fact, I'm a subscriber to his Patreon account where he shows that analytical mind, where he thinks outside the box, not just when it comes to boxing, but in life in general, whether you're talking about, life or politics or society, philosophy, psychology, whatever it might be. He touches on a whole range of topics. And listen, if you want to unsubscribe, if it's not your thing, you always can, right? So it's definitely worth checking out if you're into those sorts of things. It's, I highly recommend it. And I promise you, he hasn't paid me to say that, right? It's just really good. So it's worth checking out. And he showed that analytical mind when he was looking at this Eubank Morrison fight. I hold my hands up. I was watching it like a fan rather than trying to sort of analyze too in depth. And the truth is, like I said, I hold my hands up. I just didn't pick up on some of the things that he picked up on. Brilliant analysis, fantastic stuff. But my general position, in spite of noticing those things now, is still quite similar. It hasn't really changed my mind. And I'm just going to go into why in this particular video. You see, some of the things that Eubank does brilliantly is when he's got an opponent up against the ropes, he will throw that machine gun type combinations. And when he's on the back foot and he's luring you in, he's also very good. The problem he has is when he's trying to get you to the point of getting you on the ropes, that middle point where nothing's really happening and he's got to initiate that, I think that he lacks the ability to be creative with his entry point. I also think that he needs to develop some foot pressure games, a foot pressure game. Create an area whereby the opposing fighter feels uncomfortable when he's expending a lot of energy. In the breakdown I've done of the Canelo Billy Joe Saunders fight, you'll see that I go into the sorts of things that Canelo does in that regard. He's a different fighter completely, Eubank to Canelo, but I'm just trying to explain that you can pressure a guy without actually throwing any punches. And these are the things that I want to see Eubank develop. Things that are more conducive to a pressure fighting style, right? Now, I'll give you an analogy as to why. Let's say, for argument's sake, you've gone and bought yourself a house up in Scotland. You bought it a year ago. And it's up in Scotland and it's quite a small house. You're married, you've got 2 kids, but you've got a massive garden. Lockdown took place and you've been in and out of lockdown. It's been very depressing for you. It's so small, that property, that it's almost like being in a prison. The kids don't have their own personal space and so on and so forth. And you're stressing and you're thinking, listen, we've got to do something about this. So you turn to the missus and you say, what should we do? And she says, listen, why don't we build an extension? We can make the house bigger. We'll take half the garden. It's a massive house. Let's take half the garden and make the house bigger. You look to the kids hoping to get their approval and they say, Dad, forget mum. Forget all that. Let's build a swimming pool. If we build a swimming pool, then even if we're in lockdown during the summer, who cares? We're going to have a swimming pool. If we do it properly, it'll feel like we're on holiday anyway. We'll get our little, we'll get our big speakers out the back there. We'll turn it into a beach bar. Let's do it, Dad. Let's do it. While it's a wonderful thing, both are potentially wonderful things and would raise the property value, the fact of the matter is you're in Scotland. So what are you going to do in Scotland for what? How long are you going to use a pool for? 3-4 weeks of a year max? Certainly my Southern European arse ain't getting out in that garden any longer than that. I'll freeze to death. So the pool, although brilliant, and it does add some value to the property, is not as beneficial long term, or indeed in terms of the whole year round, as having more space indoors. Now, if I lived in sunny Cyprus or Dubai, or I lived in Barbados or somewhere in South America, then yeah, sure, get that swimming pool. But in Scotland, I'm not sure the value's enough for me to go down that route. Well, that analogy I apply to Chris Eubank. Chris Eubank, his current skill set is that small house. Now, do I expand that small house, i.e. his current skill set, to make that little house into a mansion? Or do I bring in something else to embellish it, like a swimming pool, which he will find some uses for, but it's not going to provide as much of a benefit living in Scotland, with the existing skill set that he has. That's basically the analogy that I use to believe that he should, although he's not developing these skills at the expense of pressure fighting, he could have spent the last 2 years working on becoming a more effective pressure fighter, which in my opinion is more likely to win him a world title, because I don't believe he can ever outbox the other boxers, but he can potentially outfight them if he improves on a few things. So that's how I see it. Having said that, you have to always be aware of the limitations of your own argument. And my argument does have two very strong limitations, which add weight to Hatman's position, by the way. Because Hatman, like I said, he's looking to create a fighter who's holistically better all round. Whereas I'm talking about trying to hone a fighter to make him a specialist in an area, because I think that's more likely to win him a world title. But one of the limitations to my argument is that Chris Eubank's a pressure fighting style is fitting for a younger man, for a young man. As you get older, your durability goes. Your foot speed will slow down too. So as you're looking to close that range, you won't do it as quickly. Reflexes can play a role. Not always, because a lot of pressure fighters will use arms to deflect and come inside. But a lot of the times you'll use reflexes to bypass that first and second phase attack to get on the inside. All these things, durability, punch resistance, all these things, they wane as you get older. And pressure fighting can be quite a punishing style to have as a fighter. So as he ages, even if he develops his pressure fighting skills now, he will have a shorter career, you would argue, at the top level. Whereas if he's able to develop a few other skills now, he'll have the ability to adapt, because if he's honing them while he's also trying to become a more effective pressure fighter, when he realizes actually pressure fighting doesn't suit me anymore, maybe he'll become too big for middleweight and have to campaign at super middleweight full time, and he's up against much bigger and stronger guys. Maybe jumping in like that all the time and looking to pressure fight won't help him as much. So maybe Hatman's approach will add longevity onto his career. The other limitation to my argument is that just because he's doing certain things that are more to do with boxing, so to speak, rather than pressure fighting, it doesn't mean that there aren't transferable skills. One of the things that Hatman talks about in his video where he's talking post-fight and he's showing the analysis and the clips is he shows one example where he gets Morrison up on the ropes with a jab, and he's turning side on, which brings about a full extension of that jab, and he's maintaining a bit more range, and he's putting his head in a safe position. And what that does, it stops Eubank from squaring on, which is something that he might have done in the past, and smothered his own work. Now, I've said obviously that Eubank is brilliant on the inside, and he's very, very good at creating space on the inside. But what I mean when I say that is when he's in control and he's already there, and it's, you know, cheek to cheek, and the other guy maybe is trying to tie him up, or they're both looking for cheeky shots on the inside, he might drop a shoulder to create a corridor of space between his chest and the opponent's chest, and then fire off 2 uppercuts from there. And as the guard comes round, he'll then turn it to hooks. He's cute at stuff like that. He's smart at stuff like that. But in terms of closing the range, because he's not creative with that entry point, he will often fall in. And when he falls in, he can smother himself. So perhaps what Hatman's saying is, if he's able to do these sorts of things, where he's able to jab a guy at range with a side on full extension, and that stops him from smothering himself, then actually, Chris, what's going to happen is that he's going to not smother his work, and it's actually going to help his entry point, which is what you want anyway, right? So those are the 2 limitations to my argument here. So, and add weight to Hatman's argument. Having said that, though, one of the reasons that my position remains the same on this is because I believe that in order to do that and to develop a new style, essentially, and to add new wrinkles to your game, not necessarily a new style, but to have the ability to create that new style at a high level, you need to really perfect one style first and develop that identity first, in my opinion. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'll give you the example of Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, for all the criticism he got, he perfected a style. He was a very patient hunter, but patient. He would line you up. He would look at your movements and responses to his movements early on. And he's looking at where your head positioning is. You know, he's trying to line up your head. He doesn't want to overextend that right hand and miss and fall short and get countered. He's waiting. He's looking. He's waiting for you to make an error so he can capitalize. And you have to say he managed to do that against a whole range of boxers with different styles. Molina and Szpilka, they tried to come at him. You know, Molina, Dominic Brazil tried to come at him with a high guard. Szpilka tried to come in low underneath his shots. Luis Ortiz tried to box him and stay on the outside of his lead left shoulder and be in and out from that side. So he would be countering that left hand of Wilder's, but being at a distance, which meant that Wilder would have to rotate to throw that right hand, which meant that he would see it coming from a mile away and he'd have time to react to it. That was Luis Ortiz's game. You had Bermane Stiverne, fast-handed, really sharp puncher, who, listen, that win over Areola after Areola did what he did with the Ruiz is starting to look better and better now, right? Well, Bermane Stiverne was a dangerous man, but he was flat-footed and slow. And you saw Wilder there as well, be able to deal with that style. So a lot of people would sit there and they talk about, oh, who did he face? He faced some good fighters, not that many elite fighters, but some really good fighters with different styles. And he was always able to time them with that one right hand, except for Tyson Fury in that second fight. And a lot of people say now, Wilder's washed. Look, he's been exposed, as though, you know, everybody can do what Tyson Fury can do. Tyson Fury's got impeccable reflexes and agility for a man of his size, and he's a very special heavyweight, and he was able to walk him down, not with reach advantage as well. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. 99.5% of heavyweights that try that against Deontay Wilder are getting knocked out. So forget this idea of a blueprint and all of a sudden he's exposed and everyone's going to beat him. That's not the reality. But when Wilder did perfect that style that he has, he should have gone on to develop other skills. So I'm not saying you have to lose first or be exposed first to look at developing other skills, but he should have looked at it in the past. Now it seems like he's considering doing these things. Maybe he's going to look at how to get that right hand off when he is moving backwards at a quick pace. You know, how to lure a guy in to throw it when he's under pressure. Maybe when, you know, he was getting caught quite square on with Fury on a lot of occasions there when he was crossing his feet as he was moving backwards. Maybe he's going to work on his footwork when he's moving backwards. All these things. But first he perfected his style, his skill set. Eubank for me has yet to perfect that skill set. I still want to see him become the consummate pressure fighter before he starts to become more of a boxer pressure fighter, like a counter-punching pressure fighter, maybe like a Canelo has become, or whatever it might be. I want him to become first a brilliant pressure fighter, because what I fear is that he'll never master this style. he'll start to blur the styles. He'll start to, fall into the ring. I want to become a boxer. He'll realize that maybe it doesn't suit him, and now it's too late to perfect the pressure fighting style. So that's my fear with Eubank. I would personally, if I was training him, rather than try and create a holistic fighter, I want him to be the best he can be at what he's good at, especially at the age he's at. He's not 21 anymore. But listen, like I said, guys, nothing but love and respect for Hatman. Hugely, hugely intelligent guy. And one of the beautiful things is that we can all disagree about boxing and bounce ideas off of each other. If everything was straightforward and factual, there'd be no point in watching the fights because we'd all know what would happen beforehand, right? And the fact of the matter is we don't know who's going to end up being right or wrong in terms of how fruitful this partnership's going to be until he steps up and we see him moving through the rankings and taking on bigger tests. So we just don't know. And I'll give you another example. In fact, Hatman put up a video where he was talking about Mayweather linking up with Anthony Joshua. And I had put up a video, the same topic, after Hatman had uploaded his. But I did it before I'd seen Hatman's video. And when I then saw Hatman's video, I thought to myself, my word, Hatman's actually going to think. I looked at his video and started copying the things he'd been saying. Even some of the phrases we used, like too many cooks spoiling the broth, were the same. And I was thinking, he's going to actually think I went on his channel, checked out his videos, and then copied the video, right? I mean, not everything we said was exactly the same, but there was a lot of crossover. The point is you can agree with someone on a whole host of things and then disagree on something else. You can still respect each other's views massively. So, this is coming really from a place of respect. And it's just us bouncing ideas off of each other. Let me know what you all think, guys, what your view is on this. Where do you see Eubank going in the future with Roy Jones? Do you like what you're seeing? Do you think he should look to develop more of a boxing skill set rather than just straight up pressure fighting? Or do you think that he should first master what he's good at before looking at expanding elsewhere? Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Chat to you soon. God bless. Hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and notification button. Thanks, guys. Take care.